Well, Singapore's finance minister says the country needs to increase its revenues due to a structural funding gap as its expenditure rises. In a speech to round up the three-day debate on the budget statement, Finance Minister Lawrence Wong explains that while Singapore's reserves are growing, the size of the economy and complexity of needs are growing even faster. He also explains why increasing taxes is better than spending more from reserves or land sale proceeds, which were suggested by the opposition. Brendan Tarnoto with this report.
The finance minister says some of the increase in spending is necessary and unavoidable. He points to Singapore's ageing population, which is expected to be the main driver of the rise in social spending. Mr. Wong also drove home the point that it is not in Singapore's national interest to reveal the full size of its reserves. He said this in response to requests from the opposition for information on the national reserves.
Our reserves are our strategic defense against threats. If we disclose this information, we will be making it easier for potential adversaries to use it against us. Why would we want to do that? We have shared extensively about our needs and plans and will continue to put out more information where necessary. But I can't help but feel that the persistent requests for more information are red herrings.
Mr. Wong also rebutted proposals from the Workers' Party and Progress Singapore Party to revise the reserves framework and the way it contributes to the budget. This includes adjusting the net investment returns contribution allowed for recurrent spending.
Now, Mr. Wong explained that the goods and services tax would have to be raised to 11% instead of 9% to plug funding gaps if the previous government had drawn more from the reserves for recurrent spending.
The opposition also proposed that a portion of land sales goes into recurrent revenue. But Mr. Wong warns that once a government gets used to relying on land sales to fund spending, it will have a vested interest to keep land prices high to maximize revenues. He says such an outcome will hurt the economy and Singaporeans.
When we sell land, we are not creating new wealth. We are merely converting the land from a physical to a financial asset. Therefore, we invest the land sale proceeds back with the rest of the reserves and we spend 50% of the expected long-term real return through the NIR framework. In this way, our land sale proceeds provide a stable and sustainable stream of income for our budget over time. So to be clear, that means we are already spending from our land sale proceeds.
Mr. Wong also rebutted suggestions to raise property tax revenue to remove the need for a GST hike. He points out that the latest property tax hikes announced at the budget do not affect owner-occupied housing board flats and 2/3 of private residential properties. But the suggestions would change this.
Let's say we tax all non-owner-occupied residential properties at a flat 36%. This would still not be enough, because the number of non-owner-occupied residential properties is considerably less than that of owner-occupied residential properties. So, we will need to raise property tax rates significantly for owner-occupied residential properties, including for HDB flats.
Mr. Wong also explains that raising the amount of revenue needed without the GST hike would also mean that personal income tax for the top income brackets would rise from 22% to 42%. This would badly damage Singapore's competitiveness and impact jobs. He adds that other options like sin taxes for things like tobacco and gambling are also regressive and would also have a bigger impact on lower income groups.
Our tax system must never discourage hard work, effort, and enterprise. So we will continually review and update our system of taxes and transfers to achieve this balance, to reward enterprise, innovation, and work, and to mitigate the pressures of social inequalities.
Tax proposals suggested by opposition parties to raise revenue without increasing the goods and services tax, or GST, are too simplistic and divisive. That's according to Finance Minister Lawrence Wong. He added that these ideas will only end up creating more problems for our society. Heidi Ng reports.
Revenue from higher income and wealth taxes cannot replace the planned goods and services tax hike. Instead, Finance Minister Lawrence Wong says a good mix of income-based asset-based and consumption-based taxes is needed to ensure our revenue stream remains diversified and resilient while being fair and progressive.
Every tax move we make is carefully considered so that we have, in the end, a balanced, effective, and fair set of tax measures in the budget. More importantly, a progressive fiscal system does not and should not mean that each and every tax is progressive, let alone highly progressive. What ultimately matters is the overall system of taxes and transfers to ensure that that overall system is progressive, and that's what we have done.
Mr. Wong adds that claims made by some opposition party members that the GST hike will hurt the poor are misguided. He explained that when the GST rate is raised to 9%, together with the enhanced GST voucher scheme, the effective GST rate for the lower income group remains unchanged. In fact, the bottom 10% won't pay any GST at all after offsets. The middle income will also continue to pay an effective GST below the headline 9% rate. Instead, the better off will bear the brunt of the GST increase.
They may be investors, persons of means. They may not be paying much in income today, even though they have the means to contribute, because their income is not easily ascertained. And that could be, for example, if they are self-employed. But they will certainly be consuming more. And the GST ensures that such people, those with greater means, will contribute their fair share of taxes.
Mr. Wong also shared why the government chose not to exempt or lower the GST on essential goods. Such a system, he says, will lead to businesses trying to get their products classified into lower tiers, thereby increasing administrative costs and efforts. Based on an exercise conducted by the Finance Ministry, an exemption of the 4 categories from GST would mean an expected loss of about $1.2 billion in tax revenue, of which $185 million, or 15% of GST not collected, would benefit the bottom 20% of households. Mr. Wong says a broad-based tax like GST is vital as it makes a direct link between the demands of Singaporean voters and their responsibilities as citizens.
The bottom line is that we cannot sustain a tax system where the bulk or all of the burden is borne by a small group of people at the top end. It will not be possible to hold our society together if only a small group of people are required to pay more taxes all the time, while the rest simply get to piggyback on their contributions to enjoy more benefits.
He adds that Singapore's tax and benefits system was carefully designed on the principle of collective responsibility, where everyone plays their part to help themselves and one another to build a fair and inclusive system. When it comes to the well-to-do, Mr. Wong says they contribute in many other ways and not just to income or wealth taxes.
Many have set up businesses in Singapore, creating good jobs for Singaporeans and helping to develop new capabilities in our economy. And while these individuals are here in Singapore, they consume more and pay more in GST. Some also set up philanthropic foundations, contributing to our charities and other worthy causes.